everybody, and welcome to Fight and Focus. I'm Josh Shernoff, and I am joined now by JT Tilley, the founder of SlapFight Championship, and we are talking about the March 4th event, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on FITE. Of course, it is SlapFight Championship 15 Armageddon. And man, I am excited to talk about the main event, the rematch about that. But first, let's get into this. JT Tilley, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Very excited to have you here. So as I mentioned, you are the founder of SlapFight. So before we even get into this, obviously, SlapFight 15, how did this come about? How did you come up with the idea? Were you the one who came up with the idea to do this? Take us back a little bit of maybe a Cliff Notes version of the history of SlapFight Championship that brought us to this point.
Okay. The Cliff Notes version would be back in 2015. I saw all the same viral videos that everyone else saw. There was a Russian YouTuber that was doing slap fights. Back then, they were calling them slap contests. And Dumpling, Vasily Kamatsky, was kind of the focal point. And he would go up against, Russian YouTubers and influencers, and there were millions and millions of views. And I just thought, well, this is a crazy thing I'd never seen before. And I had been in the mixed martial arts business as a promoter and a coach for about 20 years. And I had done maybe 110, 115 big scale MMA shows. And I thought, well, gosh, this is such a strange thing that I wonder if there's any long-term life to it. So we paid close attention to it. We talked to our local state. We're in Missouri. I'm in Branson, Missouri. That's where my gym is. That's where I'm at now. And we talked to the athletic commissioner of the state of Missouri a few times, and we found out what the weak spots were. We added some regulation. And then in 2017, with the blessing of the commission, we just decided to give it a shot. And, honestly, we've done this is our 15th show coming up this weekend. We've had, I think, a collective 75 individual fights, and we're now the company that's had more fights than anyone in the world. I think as of our last event, we've had more individual slap fights than all other producers combined. So I guess now that makes us the biggest company out there.
So now you talked about, and you're on Fights. That makes you the biggest company out there.
Yeah, we're really happy about that.
And we're happy to have you. You talked about your gym that you have, your time in mixed martial arts as a coach. There's more to it than just slapping someone.
Oh yes, sir.
And I mean, that might just kind of sound funny when I'm breaking down slapping someone in the face, but watching, I have here a note. There are some rules to slap fight as well. There's no clubbing, no stepping, no flinching. Can you kind of take us through those, and then maybe take us through the actual, I guess we'll say, training behind it?
Sure. Well, to answer your question about the training, we actually don't do any slap fight training here at my gym. This is a mixed martial arts gym. The slap fighters, typically they train on their own. They all have there's some pretty crazy methods, but they all kind of do their own thing. And at this point in the sport, it's all very private. They don't like to talk about it. They don't like to give away their secrets, but most of them train at home. Very few of them train in groups. They're all individual training right now. But to be completely honest, it's just one of those sports that's just beginning to be respected as a sport. And before this last couple of years, it was more of a sideshow or a freak show. And that's kind of what our mission has been. As far as the rule structure, it's really simple. We knew when we started the event, we knew that we needed to keep the fighters safe. That's first and foremost in any combat sport. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we had noticed, mostly in Eastern Europe, which most of our counterparts are in Eastern Europe, we noticed that a lot of them had no safety protocol, no concussion protocol, no weight classes. And so we decided that the first thing we needed to do was restrict the movement of the feet. Because as you already know, Josh, if I were to throw a right hook and I were to pivot my foot or step with my body, there's a lot more momentum in that right hook as a result. So it's the same thing with slapping. Excuse me. And so what we did when we discovered that we were going to go forward with the league is we decided immediately to make the no stepping rule. You can't pivot your feet. You can't step into the strike. You can't use your body momentum in any way that moves your feet. And that's one of the ways that we try to protect the competitors from just taking basically punches to the face without being able to defend.
And it's interesting because what you're saying is that is the proper way to strike, is to utilize, and some people don't don't know that, but you know, it's not all upper body. There's so much of that power is coming from the lower body. So by doing that, yeah, you really are taking a lot of the power out of it. And that might sound like a negative, but it certainly, first of all, it certainly doesn't take the power away from, we've seen a lot of knockouts, and we're going to talk about all that. But yeah, obviously from a safety standpoint, that makes a lot of sense. That's very interesting. So yeah, I kind of cut you off there, but continuing. So that would be stepping. Let's talk about clubbing.
Clubbing is very similar. Clubbing, we noticed in a lot of the European slapping, we noticed that there were a lot of methods that were really unsafe. They were getting a lot of broken orbital bones and eye sockets, broken jaws, concussed fighters. I mean, they've had a lot of very dangerous fights in Eastern Europe. And one of the things that they don't regulate is the placement of the hand when you slap. I see a lot of guys slapping here. That's not a slap. To me, that's a palm strike to the chin. So what we do is we regulate the slapping. And if you can see my hand here, I got to see if I'm in the screen. You can land the heel of your hand. It says in our rule structure that the heel of the hand may make contact with the face, but it can't extend any further than the tip of the chin.
Right.
So if I were to land a slap like this is a clean slap. This is not a clean slap. This is a club. So anybody that catches you with just their fingers, just like that, that's a slap. It's great. You can win a fight like that, but probably not going to get a knockout. And that's okay. But if you play the game where you're trying to get a knockout, you've got to be very careful that when you land that strike, it can't be any deeper than the chin. And that happens a lot. Sometimes guys will mess up and hit the neck or the top of the head. In a situation like that, you're taking a chance and breaking your hand and wasting your turn. But those are clubs. And the first time you do that to your opponent, there's a warning. And the second time that happens, you lose a turn, which means you'll have to take 2 slaps in a row, which is horrible for most of the guys. So there's no stepping and there's no clubbing, but there's also no flinching.
Right. And I want you to explain that, because some people might watch and go, wait a minute, I saw a flinch there. So you're very specific about what a flinch is. So let's talk about that.
Absolutely. I hear a lot of the YouTube comments and the social media comments. You got a lot of people that think they're familiar with the rule structure and they try to sort of police it. And one of the things that they might not understand is that in our rule structure, it does state that small reactions are allowed, but anything that affects the power of the slap is a foul. So if I were to move just a little bit just before the slap, you can hear when you're in the live audience, you can hear when the slap makes contact. Sometimes that doesn't resonate through video to the fans, but we can hear here quite simply whenever we're in the room. And when the slap lands, you got a nice big slap. If you turn your head and the slap still lands, it glances off and you can hear the difference. So anytime you flinch enough that it glances off your cheek, that's not a legal strike. But if you just give a little movement as it comes in, that's just to be expected. That's just fight or flight response.
Yeah, that's
so
just
no
natural.
Stepping, no flinching, no clubbing. That's how we aim to keep competitors safe. We also have a lot of concussion protocol. We have 3 officials watching the fight from every angle. We have 3 judges, 2 sanctioning representatives, and then right off screen there's an EMT and a medical doctor watching. So we don't talk about that during the videos because, of course, the fans like watching things that they feel like they're not supposed to be watching. So we don't really go into the regulation all the time. But what you'll find in our shows is that there is more money spent on steroid testing and fight regulation than anything else at SlapFight Championship.
Wow, really? Steroid testing?
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to be negative about any other companies, but currently we're the only company in the world that tests our competitors for performance-enhancing drugs. And the reason is we don't want anybody to come in, first of all, with superhuman strength. We don't want guys going Super Saiyan and then slapping each other in the face like that. But we also know that when you take an illegal steroid, not only does it make you stronger, but it also makes you more resilient. And we've seen competitors fall down multiple times and get back up against their better judgment because of steroids. Not in our show, but in other shows. In our show, we test the night before the show. We test for steroids and we test for all performance enhancing drugs. And we've had 14 events. And so far we've only had 1 positive test. And immediately that guy was removed from the show.
So you mentioned you had 14. Well, now we're getting ready for 15, which is going to be March 4th, 8 p.m. Eastern time here on FITE. You've named it Armageddon. Great name. And I want to talk to you about the main event. At least I perceive it to be the main event. It is the rematch of the Bell versus Frank the Tank. I went back and I watched their first encounter. Something that stood out to me. So it was a round 7 TKO, the Bell defeating Frank the Tank. Technical knockout, of course.
Yes,
What
sir.
I found interesting about it was Frank the Tank, it was said on the commentary during it, that he was using his left hand because he felt that since this was the Bell's first time, he was going to go easy on him and only use his left hand. He, of course, is right-handed. Now, some could argue, man, did that turn around and bite him in the ass? Can we expect that Frank the Tank is coming in right-handed for this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, the fans demanded that. He actually there's a little backstory. I'm assuming that's what you want to hear.
Absolutely.
The backstory is this. Frank the Tank is one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my life. He's a gentle giant, and he is currently the most experienced slap fighter on the planet. Mm-hmm. And the Bell is a heavyweight boxer from Tampa, Florida. And even though he does have experience in combat sports, he's not competed in slapping. Mm-hmm. And when we were talking about who the Tank would fight in our 14th event, before we knew that the Bell was his opponent, he said, if you give me anybody that's not a top 10 fighter, I'm going to try and use my left hand just to see how I can do. And I didn't really mention that. And I'm the person who does the commentary for our shows. And I didn't mention that in the commentary. So the narrative sort of built itself.
Sure.
And people
he
felt
was
like
being a nice guy and going easy on him.
Yeah, it just sort of came across like Frank was taking it easy on him. But Frank had already committed to using his left hand before he saw the Bell. And the Bell's a massive guy. He's a big, strong guy. And, Frank stuck with his word and used his left hand, and he almost won the fight. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the fans think that had he gone right-handed, he may have knocked the Bell out. And I don't know if that's true or not. I can't wait to see what happens. They're both great guys. We think with the Bell, we think we found another top talent. And I don't know if he'll beat Frank or if Frank will beat him. And I don't really care as long as it's a good fight for the fans and both guys come away without injury.
Yeah, just going back and watching, and of course, you can go right now, watch it on demand on FITE. But man, going back and watching some of these, especially really seeing, I think I've probably watched Frank the Tank the most of any of the competitors.
Is he your favorite, Josh?
I think he is my favorite, honestly. I mean, I saw his round 1 knockout, one that I can't remember who it was against, but man, he is just. What's that?
Frank knocked out a guy named the Crow. He was also from Florida.
The Crow.
This guy is he's kind of a name. He's a football player for a team. We're not supposed to say, the backstory specifically, but I would bet if you knew football, you'd know the guy. He's from the Miami area, and he came in. We thought he was going to give Frank a hard time, and experience matters in this game. And he, as you know, he stepped up to the barrel. He was unprepared. And his first slap was kind of a wet turd, Yep. And then Frank just disintegrated him with the first slap on his end. And then his next fight, I think he knocked out Baby Ray in 1 or 2 slaps as well. He knocked out Highlander the fight before that. And I think he was about 3 knockouts in a row when he came to face the Bell. Yeah. And the Bell's a completely different monster. He's a player. So I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, we have to see that right-handed Frank the Tank. I want to see. I want to see how that's going to stack up against the
Now
Bell,
it's going to be a 10-round fight, and so one of the things that we have to keep in mind is if there isn't a knockout, the penalties are going to come into play. These guys are both so big. In their first fight, the Bell had a hard time with his pivoting.
He had a number of
again, just like what we were talking about earlier, when you're throwing a right hook as a boxer, you always pivot your foot to get more power. And during that fight, the Bell pivoted his foot a few times and was penalized. But I have to say, it was such a small pivot that it was a violation of the rules, but it didn't add any power to his slap. Sure. It was just his foot just kind of moved just a little bit. It wasn't a full step.
And you have to imagine, that to me did not seem, when I was watching it, like this was him trying to bend the rules a little bit. That seemed like that's muscle memory. Here's a guy who's a fighter, that's
Josh.
it, and you could tell he was trying not to, but it's just going to kind of sneak in anyway. What else?
The fans of our sport are so passionate. Like the fans of slap fighting, at least our fans, have been with us since the beginning, most of them. And they're just really loyal, diehard fans, and they're watching us build the sport. And we listen to them. That's one thing about our company is we have social media people. And then, of course, myself, too. We listen to every single comment. We read every email. We listen to the fans. And the fans know this. And so sometimes they get a little overzealous. I heard some people were saying that the Bell was a dirty cheater and things like that. He's not cheating. His body moved just a slight amount, and he was penalized for it. Took 2 slaps from Frank and still managed to win the fight. That's incredible. And so we got to watch the fouls this time. If he doesn't foul and it goes 10 rounds, he could win a decision. And Frank doesn't foul much either. So if it goes to decision, that might be Frank's fight. We'll see.
Yeah, and going to decision for something like this, obviously if you think boxing or MMA, the decision is based off of, okay, well, how many strikes were landed? How, were there escapes? Were there takedowns? And there's ways to do that. Well, with here, it's just I don't mean to minimize it by saying just a slap, but it is only a slap. There is no other move that is happening, no other attack.
Right.
How does a judge decide? Is it based off of maybe a little bit of a rock or a stagger or something? Is it based off of, like you mentioned, the wet turd? That wasn't getting you any points, but is it, if there's some real contact and a good sound to it, how do they decide if there's no winner? How does this come to decision?
Well, there's a few factors. When we first began in 2017, we used to score the rounds individually, almost like that archaic boxing method that we use in MMA. And we all know it doesn't work well in MMA, and it's still being used. So we were very cautious, and we realized that if there was a 10-round fight, for example, and you score each round individually, well, you've only got 1 slap per round. So there's not really a body of work there. It's pretty clear who the winner of each round is. And if you score it that way, then what happens is you get some pretty sleeper fights. I mean, I hate to keep saying wet turd, but I'd like to say it 3 or 4 times in your show just because I don't know if that'll go into the vernacular of the sport or not. But those wet turd slaps, if you and I were to slap each other and you were to land a great slap and I was to land a wet turd, well, you're going to win that round. But what happens if we're 5 rounds in and I knock you down 2 or 3 times? Well, 2 times, I guess. And at the end of the fight, I've only won 2 or 3 rounds and you've won 6 or 7. It's just not a fair way to decide the winner. So what we decided to do after the first couple events was now we judge the fight as a whole. There are 3 judges and 2 sanctioning representatives, and they'll judge on the following criteria. Penalties count. If you have penalties in the fight, they count against you in the decision. Knockdowns and staggers count. And then controlling the pace of the fight, similar to MMA. All of those things go into the judging criteria, and then each judge individually will judge the fight as a whole, who's the winner and who's the loser. And we don't extend the rounds. We don't have sudden victory or anything like that. And we don't have draws. There's a winner in every fight. And that's one of the things that the fans, I think, really respond to. But again, it's the penalties are really, really dangerous in this sport. And so what we've done is the first penalty, it's a warning, unless it's a penalty. If you were to slap me and let's say that you were to club me and knock me down, that's a horrible thing to happen to a fighter. And so what the fans don't realize is in the event of an illegal strike knocking your competitor down, there's then a 30-minute break in the action that the fans don't see because we edit it out. There's a 30-minute recovery period, and then we restart the fight.
Wow.
If it doesn't knock the competitor down, then the elite official will decide if it's worth taking a break or if there was enough damage done. But those greatly affect the decisions. Also, if you were to stagger a guy and he stays on his feet, depending on how that goes, that could be a point for the guy staying on his feet, or it could be a point for the stagger, depending on the circumstances. And so that's kind of how things are judged. But as you know, not a lot of decisions in this sport.
Sure. Now,
not a lot.
What else? Obviously, we talked about the Bell and Frank the Tank. What else is on the card that you think maybe fans at FITE should be looking out for?
Okay, well, this to me is the most fun card we've done in years. What we've decided recently about our company is that our fans really love that we have world-class slappers. We have Darius the Destroyer. He's currently ranked #1. We've got Wolverine, who's #2. Solid Slug, Frank the Tank. These guys are world-class, world-ranked competitors, and they're fantastic. But also, we'll have some fun as well. Our company is not just, we've got 25 years in combat sports, but we've also got 25 years in entertainment and comedy. And that's something that people don't know about my particular background, is that I've been in the entertainment business all my life. And so that sort of lends itself to our company. If you'll go on our YouTube, Josh, or even I think on the last FITE pay-per-view, Redemption, we had a matchup between 2 U.S. Marines. I think they were both in their late 30s. And typically that wouldn't be something that I would think we would put on a professional card. But we realized that one of the Marines was not a Marine, it was stolen valor. So suddenly we had a matchup between a real Marine and a Marine.
Oh, man.
And obviously that's not a world title fight. Obviously
No.
that's not something that's going to affect the rankings of the sport of slap fighting, but the fans would love to see it. And I can make a match like that, and that's an entertaining match to the fans, as long as it's a fair match and
Sure.
it's safely regulated. And so that's what we've decided. We had a tournament, the last tournament we did on FITE, we had a tennis player, a rapper, there was an axe thrower, a football player, a working man. And these fun matchups, people really like these matchups. Every once in a while, a champion will emerge and we'll put him in the mix with some of the world-class slappers.
Mhm.
But this fight, we decided just to find out, who was the toughest guy at the barbecue. And so we've amassed the 6 biggest super heavyweights in the United States. We have a 6-man double elimination tournament. We did a presser. We should be releasing it on FITE probably today or tomorrow. And we weighed them in at the presser, and they weighed 2,024 pounds total.
Wow.
So we're calling this the 1-ton tournament of fun. And we're not looking for the champion here. This is not a title contention tournament. There won't be a guy that emerges as the champion of slap fight. But we are going to find out who's the toughest guy at the barbecue. We've got a 400-pounder, a couple of 380-pounders, and these guys are coming to fight, and it's going to be a fantastic tournament, but it's mostly for the fans. Now, we might find a contender in the tournament. Sometimes we do. We did in the last tournament. But if we don't find a contender, we're going to have a hell of a lot of fun. We're going to keep these big men safe, and we're going to entertain our fans because that's what they appreciate. So the 1-ton tournament of fun, that's going to be the underlying tournament during the event. But also we've got quite a few exciting matchups that are non-tournament matchups as well. Of course, we've got, I mentioned the Marine versus the stolen valor. And obviously in that fight, the actual Marine won. It was an incredible fight. And if you want to watch it, it's on FITE Plus right now. You can watch it in the Redemption tournament. But Shamokin Thunderclap, he's from Shamokin, Pennsylvania, and he is a proud U.S. Marine. And he won decisively against the other gentleman, and I use that term loosely, in the Redemption tournament. And he's returned, and he will be facing the Guardian. And the Guardian is also an undefeated slapper. And these guys are at the top of the heap at middleweight. So at middleweight in slapping, that's 185 up to 200 pounds. These guys will meet in the co-main event. And without a doubt, there will be a knockout in that fight.
Wow.
Also, of course, we got the Frank the Tank fight. The Frank the Tank fight is the fight everyone wants to see. Yep. But also, Ricky is back. Ricky is our super fan who has shocked the world 3 or 4 times now. He hit me up on Instagram about 2 years ago, and he was begging for an opportunity to compete. And, that's not out of the question. You can hit us up on slapfight.live or on any of our social media, and eventually your message will get to me or the matchmaker, and we can consider you. But this kid, he wanted to fight so badly, and I asked him for his information. I asked him for a photo, and he sent me a photo, and he was holding a kitten, and he was standing in his bedroom with his boxer shorts on, with a pair of glasses, and it was in front of his sister's pink dresser with all of her, lady things on the top. And I thought, this guy wants to slap fight? This guy is wanting to compete? And I hit him back, and I said, Ricky, I don't know if this is for you. I don't know if you're an athlete. I don't know if this is something that you want to try. You could get really hurt. And he said, JT, I know what the risks are. And I've been watching this for a long time. He says, I'm not a stupid person. I know what the risks are. And I want to give it a shot. So we arranged for him to have in one of our tournaments in 2000 and I believe 20, the adrenaline tournament, we had him face another super fan. And we thought maybe the fans will like that. Maybe they'll like two fans facing each other. And Ricky showed up to the tournament, and his opponent didn't show up. His opponent was a gentleman, Big Mac, out of Houston, Texas. Big Mac decided not to show up. Hey, Big Mac. He decided not to show up. And so Ricky was here all the way from Louisiana. And at that time, I think we might have been in Alabama filming. So he was a good way from home, and there was no opponent. And we didn't know what to do for this kid. He kept begging us if he could get a spot in the tournament that we had that night. And I said, man, you're going to get hurt, kid. You know, you're not an athletic guy. And he talked his way into the tournament when we had realized that one of our competitors had injured himself and was going to have to use his left hand, similar to Frank. So we thought, okay, we'll let you have it, Ricky. You can have this guy because he's using his left hand, and we'll let you have that fight. And if you watch the fight, it's the most unintentionally funny fight I've ever seen. They fouled each other left and right. It was a crazy match. I think it lasted 10 rounds. And at the end, Ricky snuck in a win. He snuck in a victory. And the next thing you know, people went crazy for Ricky. So when we did our first pay-per-view on FITE, we brought him back. We had him fight another super fan. And he won in I think 1 or 2 slaps.
Wow.
And then we had another event. We had Ricky. We never put that one out. That video's not been released yet. But then we had another event with Ricky, and Ricky won again. And the next thing you know, Ricky's got like 3 wins in a row.
Wow.
And he calls me up and he says, I want to take this seriously. I want to be pro. I want to be a pro fighter. And, you know, that's a lot of people call me up and say they want to be pro fighters. That's not something you just do. You know, you don't just say, it's like saying I want to be a ballerina. It doesn't happen the next day, you know. And so, you know, I thought about it and I stayed in contact with him, and I noticed that he had started training in combat sports and he had lost 40 or 50 pounds. And I realized that this kid was really taking it seriously, and his social anxiety had gone away. And there was a certain amount of personal pride that he had gotten from these victories and several million YouTube views. I think he's got maybe 10 million views on YouTube or something. And so the next thing I know, I thought, okay, Ricky, I'm going to give you a shot. And he wanted a top 10 opponent. So Friday night, he's going to face Baby Ray, who is number 10 in the world. And I'm a little bit uneasy about it. Yeah. But, you know, Baby Ray is a professional MMA fighter. He took Stephen Bonner to a decision. That'll give you an idea.
Wow.
So he's a threat. Yeah. I don't want him slapping me. And Ricky said, yeah, I'll take the guy. He would have fought anybody. And so this is a case of a kid coming in that believes in himself. I'm a real nervous wreck about the fight. You know, it may get called early just because I'm so nervous. I don't know. But this kid believes in himself, Josh, and he thinks that he can beat Baby Ray. And so, I mean, who are we to not give him the opportunity? So that's the fight that I'm the most excited about, just to see if he survives. Maybe he wins. Maybe I don't know what happens, but the Bayou Bastard is his fight name, and he's going to face Baby Ray in a featured fight. And then we've got a couple of fights on the undercard. We've got a swimmer coming in. We haven't had a swimmer in our events yet. So in theory, that's it seems like something that might prepare you for slapping. And I believe we've got a golfer. I would think golf would maybe prepare you as well. And our last tournament was won by a tennis player, and I wouldn't have expected that. But I'm learning as we go, just like everyone. I'm learning that the sport of slapping is a little different than other sports. But one thing that I am well versed in is striking. And I can tell you, I don't have to tell you, actually, I know that you know, Josh, but the viewers can think about this. It's not about muscle. Getting a knockout over your opponent, it's not about how big you are. Take a personal moment and think about all of the fighters who've been champions in the UFC over the last 20 years. You've not seen a bodybuilder win. You've not seen a man with giant muscles win any MMA championships, because those muscles suck up all of your oxygen when you're fighting, and they enable you to fight hard for about 1 minute. And then all of your, you know, most of these guys can't even wipe their ass, Josh. You know what I mean? So how are they going to be able to slap you and knock you out? The guys that get knockouts are the guys that are sleek and fast and have good precision. And so for me, I'm learning that guys like White Simba, who's a tennis pro, he knocked out several guys in the last few months. Just doesn't look like a threat at all. He's 6'5". He's a skinny kid, but he's got a he's got a backhand, and Shamokin Thunderclap, the guy who's a Marine, I believe he's 5'6", and he's just a little fire plug, but he's not a tall guy. He doesn't have a lot of reach, and he's knocked some guys out as well. And so what I'm learning is that, most people listen with their eyes, and they think that the more muscles you have, the more you're going to be a good slapper, but that's not the case at all. And we've seen that time and time again. It's the guy that shows up ready. That's the guy that's going to slap the hardest. The guy that's got the precision and the speed to catch you right on the button before you can get ready for it. That's the guy that's going to deliver the hardest slaps. But the guy that ends up being the winner could be anyone, because you can't train your chin.
Sure.
That's not something that you can develop. You either have a good chin or you don't have a good chin. So how do I know Ricky's not going to be the winner on Friday night? I have no idea. So I urge you to tune in and see what happens. The tournament, the 1-ton tournament of fun, that's going to be a blast. I mean, we've got a guy from Leesburg, Florida. His name's Nico Mufasa, and he's a rapper. And he's a huge guy. I think he's 6'5", 409 pounds. His first round matchup is against a 380-pound guy from the state of Kentucky. And you'll see on our presser at the weigh-in, for the first time ever, they got into it. We have never had that happen in our show. And we had nearly 800 pounds of walrus going face-to-face at the weigh-in. And, all of our officials are also professional MMA fighters. And so they're capable, but they're also small.
Yeah, right.
And I think we had a 155-pound referee smashed in between these two guys while they were in each other's faces. I can't wait to see who wins.
I'm just trying to think about who has to catch one of them if they get knocked out.
I don't know. We're gonna this weekend
we're gonna have down maybe, and
we're gonna have 2 cornermen per guy in that tournament just because they're so big. But we also do compete on 2.5 inches of padded flooring. Okay, so when guys go down, they're not going down on the floor. We just don't advertise that because it seems that the American fans enjoy watching something that they don't think they're supposed to be watching.
Yeah.
So the more danger that it seems like, the more people are there to watch.
The event comes to you March 4th, 8 o'clock Eastern time, right here on FITE. You don't want to miss it, so go now.
Fans, don't forget to log on to FITE Plus and watch Slap Mountain. It's our found footage comedy series, season 2, premiering on FITE next week. Go take a look at season 1. It's the funniest content on the internet.
Well, you heard him. You got to go do that. Do it right now. JT Tilley told you. Oh, and by the way, I just wanted to say before we go, I had a bit of an idea. I think your next show, SlapFight Championship 16, maybe we call it No Wet Turd.
No Wet Turd. Actually, that's the chant I think we'll hear in the audience this time.
There we go. All right.
Absolutely. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate
thank you. Everybody go right now. Make sure that you check it out. March 4th, 8 o'clock Eastern time. I am so excited for this. SlapFight Championship 15, Armageddon. JT Tilley, thank you so much. Everybody, we will see you again next time on Fight and Focus.